events. I love talking about transfer factor, talking about For Life, talking about the research that we do. And I just want to say thank you to everyone on this call and all of our customers and affiliates from around the world. We really can't do any of this if it wasn't for you. And so we really are a team. We are really together building people because without you and your efforts, what I do couldn't be possible. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I'm excited to talk about For Life Transfer Factor, the science of For Life Transfer Factor. So let me go ahead and share my screen and let's get started. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Thumbs up? Okay, great. Well, today's talk, we're going to be talking about the science of transfer factor. So, I'm just going to minimize. Okay, so are you feeling the same excitement as me? I hope you are, because it's truly an exciting moment for me to, again, be a part of this talk. Now, before we start, I have a couple of questions for you. So do you know what your immune system is? I mean, do you really know what your immune system is, what it does for your body? Do you know what transfer factor is and what it does for your body? So think about these for a moment, because that's what we're going to be talking about. And as Sherilyn had mentioned, my name is David vollmer.
Chief Scientist Officer ของ For Life Research และผมไม่สามารถย้ำได้มากพอโดยเฉพาะยิ่งถ้าเรายังอยู่ในช่วงของแพนเดมิกเนี่ยผมก็เชื่อว่าพวกเราคงจะพอจะรับได้นั่นก็คือเหตุผลที่เราอยากจะพูดในวันนี้ว่าระบบภูมิคุ้มกันของเราและทรานส์ติดตาม
So, what is your immune system? What is your immune system? And so when we think about our immune system, we can't always just think about boosting our immune system, right? Blindly boosting our immune system isn't always the right move. We actually need to educate our immune system, especially during these challenging times. The second part, we'll talk about what is For Life Transfer Factor. So how does For Life Transfer Factor Plus compared to other For Life Transfer Factor products? And then finally, we'll talk about how does For Life Transfer Factor work for you? So why For Life Transfer Factor and what is the latest science? And we're really going to be talking about some of the latest science that we have worked on with For Life Transfer Factor. So the first part is the immune system. And in this part, we're really going to learn about our immune system. Where is it located in our body? What are the cells and the processes that are involved? And how does all of that relate to our overall health? And we'll conclude this session with a few take-home points that are easy for you to remember, as well as to share with others so that they can better understand what happens inside our body and also what happens when you take For Life Transfer Factor products. So the immune system has two main functions: keep harmful things out and get rid of anything that does get in. And actually performing these functions is really, really complicated. But there are fundamental processes of your immune system. So first, where is your immune system? So the immune system is everywhere in your body. In some of these locations, the immune cells are produced. In others, they're matured. In others, they serve as the circulatory system. So let's go through each one of these. First, we have our tonsils, so the two oval masses in the back of our throat. There are immune cells. Adenoids, these are two glands at the back of our nasal passages, so all the way back behind our nasal passages. Of course, we have our lymph nodes. These are small organs shaped like little beans. And they're located all over our body, and they're connected via what we call the lymphatic vessels. Of course, the lymph vessels is a network of channels all over our body that carry lymphocytes to our lymphoid organs and to the bloodstream. We have our thymus, that's a small organ behind our breastbone. This is where the immune cells, the T cells, and we'll talk about what T cells are here in a second. This is where the T cells actually mature. We have our spleen, which is sort of a fist-sized organ. This is located on the left side of our belly. We also have an area where immune cells that doesn't get a lot of attention, and these are called the Peyer's patches. And these are lymphoid tissues in our small intestines. And these are an important aspect when it comes to transfer factor. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Of course, we have our bowel and our appendix. These are organs that play a central role in defending the body against pathogens. And they house more than half of the adaptive immune cells, as well as help maintain healthy gut flora or healthy gut microbiome. And finally, we have our bone marrow. This is the soft, fatty tissue that are inside our bones where our immune cells are actually made. So I mentioned the Peyer's patch. This is really a fancy name for the part of our immune system that's in our gut. And the majority of the immune system, which is about 70% of the immune system, resides in our gut. And they reside in our gut because this is where a lot of our health threats come to be, because we are ingesting things that might have a negative effect on our bodies. And so gut immune cells monitor the boundary, which is potentially a dangerous source of infections. So healthy immune cells, intact gut lining, and healthy microflora, or this microbiome, are really important for good gut immunity. So let's learn now about the different immune cell types. There are 8 major types of immune cells in our immune system, each one having its own role, yet still all working together, much like a symphony. There are 2 main types of tasks that the immune system performs for you in your body. The first, and the one that you're most familiar with, is the immune system blocks or gets rid of bacteria and viruses that can make you sick. So toxins are a unique category. An attack doesn't always come from bacteria and viruses. Actually, many toxins, such as foreign chemicals in our food or environment you might eat or breathe in, are neutralized by the liver, making them harmless. Some larger toxins require the immune system to intervene. So the second major task of the immune system works to identify and destroy your own cells when those cells have been compromised by a virus or an inborn error that causes the cell to no longer carry out its functions. So the immune system can actually recognize both of these types. Now, there are also 2 types of immune system functions. One is the innate immunity, and so this is kind of like your standing army, and these are cells that are always on the alert, looking to attack anything that it sees as foreign or harmful to us. We also have the adaptive immune system, which is kind of like a trained special force prepared for one specific mission. So once you're exposed to a specific invader, the adaptive immune system makes sure that you won't get sick from those specific organisms again. So vaccines, you can think, work in the same manner. They provide the first exposure of a weakened version of the bacteria or virus so that you can train your adaptive immune system and they don't ever have to face the full disease. So the innate immunity involves many different cell types. These include cells with more than one nucleus, so neutrophil, eosinophil, basophil, plus they also include monocytes and macrophages, as well as one that we all know, natural killer cells. In addition to innate immunity, includes physical barriers such as the skin, the mucous membrane found in your nose, in your gut, and your trachea. These are all things to keep out of your lungs. So I'm only going to talk about a few of these different immune cell types, the ones that are pertinent to transfer factor. And one of those is the macrophage. So once a monocyte becomes a macrophage, so monocytes turn into macrophages, it performs the job of what we call a cell eater. Now, this goes and eats the bad cells. This process is called phagocytosis. Macrophages patrol an area of the tissues, and they remove dead cells, cell debris, as well as sometimes even removing microbes. Natural killer cells, or NK cells, are the communicators between the innate and adaptive immunity. They kill the threats by releasing cytokines, things like interferon gamma, perforin, or granzyme, or by inducing cell suicide. When our cells are stressed or they have a defect, they express specific peptides on their cell membrane. Natural killer cells recognize these signals, and then they destroy the stressed or defective cells. Natural killer cells are widespread throughout the body. They communicate extensively with other immune cells to gauge the intensity of cytotoxic activity. The more active the surrounding cells are, the more cytotoxic the natural killer cells behave. However, this activity eliminates both the threat and the active cells. So, for example, when natural killer cells encounter active macrophages that are dealing with an infected cell, the natural killer cells can help destroy the infected cell and the activated macrophage. So, in summary, natural killer cells control infected cells, they eliminate activated cells, especially macrophages and T cells, and they destroy our own defective cells. Now, natural killer cells actually live for about 2 weeks. Adaptive immunity is also known as a delayed response. So adaptive immunity plays a role in the inflammatory response, in producing a fever. Adaptive immunity uses inflammation in the fever to help fight the initial infection while preparing immune memory with antibodies. Now, while this provides a delayed defense to the attack at hand, it also carries out a much more important process for the future, ensuring that if you're ever exposed to that particular bug or virus again, that you won't have inflammation, fever, or any other symptoms. Your body will eliminate the threat quickly due to the preserved memory of how to beat that specific attack. So T cells are one of the key cell types in the adaptive immunity. They get their name because they mature in the thymus gland. So remember we talked about the thymus gland. There are two main types of T cells. There are helper T cells and cytotoxic T cells. So helper T cells, they recognize the threats, whereas cytotoxic T cells, they release these things called cytokines, which can activate cytotoxic T cells. Now, the main job of T cells is to search for a specific threat and alert the immune system. So remember, unlike innate immunity that attacks invaders in a very general way, T cells are tuned to a very, very specific invader. T cells have the ability to recognize threats. They can distinguish self from non-self by expressing specific proteins on the surface, as shown here in the slide. So T cells are constantly searching for non-self foreigners. These surface proteins bind to other proteins found in the self or in the non-self. And then when T cells bind to non-selves or to what we call an antigen, they can alert the rest of the immune system that we have a non-self person or a virus or a bacteria or what have you. T cells get their name because they are produced, they are matured, and they're released from the bone marrow. They leave the bone marrow and they go to the spleen where they finish their maturation process. Once a B cell recognizes a specific antigen, it differentiates and produces antibodies. A B cell that produced an antibody is called a memory B cell, and it carries the immune memory of the antigens that they have just encountered. So immunoglobulins are also called our antibodies, and they are created by the B cells to fit
Nako. Meron ba tayong connection?
to a foreign memory of that antigen, and it takes time for that antigen to be produced, or that antibody to be produced. So when you get exposed to the same antigen over and over again, your B cells can act more quickly and efficiently because the antibodies are already made for that specific antigen. Now, mothers transfer antibodies to newborns via the placenta or via breastfeeding. This immunity transfer is the fundamental principle of for-life transfer factor, and that's something that we'll learn in the next few sections. Now, we talked about all the different cell types and the two major types of the immune response, the innate and the adaptive. It's important to remember that the immune system is everywhere in our bodies, and that both types of immunities, adaptive and immediate, all work together. These cells communicate with one another, and they help each other produce an overall robust immune response. So, in summary, the immune system is everywhere in our body. The innate immunity involves many different cell types. It's our first line of defense with an immediate response. The innate and adaptive immunity works in synchrony, right? So it's like a symphony working together. It's designed to keep harmful things out and gets rid of anything that comes in contact with. And the adaptive immunity involves B cells and T cells, and they recognize current threats, and then they remember those as future threats, and they offer a delayed response. So the immune system is a highly sophisticated and balanced network that protects our body, our organs, and our cells from different threats. So you want to keep it active and balanced. So not hyperactive or overactive, nor do you want it to be hypoactive or not active enough. Neither one of those is a good thing. And so in many cases, the immune system that overacts is as harmful and dangerous as one that's underperforming or one that stops working. Now, in general, an overactive immune system leads to many autoimmune disorders because in hyperactive immune responses, your body can't tell the difference between your healthy, normal cells or the invaders. So in essence, your immune system is turning against you or turning against itself. Now, imagine in our army analogy, imagine an army that went chaotically overactive and turns against its own people, right? That's not something that we really want. So common conditions that are caused by an overactive immune system include rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, celiac disease, lupus, all sorts of afflictions or diseases can happen when your immune system is working against itself. So when it comes to how to educate your immune system, not only during this challenging pandemic that we all have learned to somewhat live with, but really during any period of time, healthy lifestyle is truly the key. So let me say that again, healthy lifestyle is the key. As you learn from your immune system, it's a highly sophisticated network that are located throughout your body, organs, and cells. Your immune health is everything about your body's health. So let's talk about a few things that we can do to help strengthen our immune system and our overall health. So the first is to get adequate sleep. Research looking at sleep and physical health has made clear that regular, high-quality sleep is essential for proper immune function. Studies show that just like sleep can help your brain consolidate learning and memory, it can also strengthen your immune memory. Particularly the interaction of your immune system components during sleep reinforces the immune system's ability to remember, to recognize, and to respond to potential health threats. Now, for adults, experts recommend getting approximately 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. 2, minimize stress. And I know easier said than done, but in small amounts, stress actually can be a good thing. It's what allows you to respond quickly to dangerous situations and helps keep you productive in a day-to-day life. But high levels of stress or stress that sticks around for a long time, that type of stress can be really harmful. When you experience a stressful situation, the brain activates stress signaling pathways, which stimulate the release of hormones that actually regulate some of the immune functions. Chronic stress keeps these pathways always turned on and the hormone levels, such as cortisol, at a high level. Now, when this happens, both the innate and adaptive immune responses can be suppressed, potentially interfering with our body's ability to defend itself from these harmful threats. Now, for this reason, finding ways to incorporate stress-reducing activities such as meditation into your daily life is an important way to support your immune system functions. Exercise regularly. Moderate to vigorous intensity exercise has been shown to benefit the immune system by improving the activity of specific immune cells such as macrophages and stimulating the circulation of others such as cytokines, natural killer cells, T cells, and B cells. With regular exercise, these changes accumulate over time to help strengthen our immune system. So research also suggests that habitual exercise may delay the onset of something called immunosenescence, which is essentially the natural decline of our immune system that occurs as we age. According to the World Health Organization, adults should aim for 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise weekly, or about 30 minutes 5 days per week. They also recommend muscle strengthening activities about 2 days out of the week. Now, what about our diet? Eat a diet high in fruits and vegetables. I tell this to my kids all the time and they don't listen, but anyway, eat a diet high in fruits and vegetables. Good nutrition is required for all cells to function optimally, and this includes cells within our immune system. A balanced diet provides the energy immune cells need to carry out their many functions. So specific micronutrients and dietary components that are found in fruits and veggies also have specific roles in the development and the maintenance of an effective immune system. So for example, zinc, the mineral zinc, regulates cell division, and it's essential for a successful immune response. Additionally, the amino acid glutamine provides an energy source for the immune cells, and it serves as a precursor for DNA synthesis, which is important for rapidly dividing cells. Now, according to the USDA dietary guidelines, adults should be eating 2.5 cups of vegetables and 2 cups of fruit every day. 5, take immune-boosting supplements. The best way to load up on nutrients, as I just mentioned, was through foods, fruits and vegetables. Most foods created by Mother Nature contain a variety of these nutrients that are always balanced and readily absorbed by our bodies. But because it's not always easy to maintain a perfect diet, finding ways to fill in the gaps is really, really important. And that's where supplements come in. They provide an alternate way to get those nutrients that you might be lacking through sometimes a poor diet. So to maintain immune health, reach for foods and or supplements that contain nutrients such as glutamine, zinc, vitamin C, vitamin D, selenium, as well as iron. These nutrients have been identified as critical for growth and functions of immune cells. Now, as you work to incorporate these strategies into your daily routine, keep in mind that these are just guidelines meant to help you along your journey towards better health. It's important to remember that you are an individual and you have unique needs. And as such, you should pay very close attention to how each practice makes you feel and adapt to meet your specific health needs. Okay, is everybody still with me? Okay, now let's get on to the second part. What is 4-life transfer factor? So the research of transfer factors went back to the 1940s when Dr. Sherwood Lawrence looked at white blood cells from an illness survivor. He noticed that by transferring whole white blood cells from a survivor to a naive donor, he could show a positive response to tuberculin, which is a short name for TB. If your body has been exposed to TB, this little spot will become swollen and red within a few days. And what Dr. Lawrence did, he used a similar test to show this transfer of immunity. He repeated this test another time a few years later and got the same results. So at this point, he knew he was onto something interesting. He called the finding transfer factors because they were factors. They didn't know what they were. They didn't have the technology that we have nowadays to be able to identify them. And so he just called them factors. And because they transferred immunity, he called them transfer factors. Now, ever since then, hundreds and hundreds of scientists have studied transfer factor and published thousands and thousands of different research papers about transfer factor. So let's first describe the sources of for-life transfer factor. So for-life transfer factor consists of small peptides and proteins. So we went from calling them factors or understanding them to be factors now to small peptides and proteins. They come from cow colostrum and they come from chicken egg yolk. So colostrum is really the first milk that's produced by a mother during the late stage of pregnancy and in the first few days of delivering the newborn. So it's sort of yellow in color. It's not white like regular milk, and it's often considered to be the most potent natural immune booster in science. In the case of for-life products, colostrum comes from cows. Cows actually produce more colostrum than the calves consume, and so the remaining colostrum can be used for human consumption. Egg yolk is the nutrient-rich portion of the egg with a primary function to supply food for the development of the embryo. In for-life products, egg yolks come from chickens. So let's look now at how and why transfer factors are made. So the ability of mothers to transfer immune knowledge to their offspring has been documented in mammals and birds well over 100 years ago. And for mammals, this transfer takes place either through the placenta prior to birth or through colostrum during lactation after birth. In birds, reptiles, and fish, this knowledge is mainly transferred from the mother to the offspring via the egg. Now, this transfer process of immune knowledge is important in the offspring's survival because its immune system is immature, it's naive, it's not yet been exposed to a lot of the environmental threats that the mother has. And so it needs that boost of immunity to get its life started. So let's talk about the different components of colostrum and egg yolk. Bovine colostrum is a very, very complex mixture of fats, of carbohydrates, of proteins, growth factors, enzyme, nucleotides, nucleosides, cytokines, fats, vitamins, and minerals. Very, very complex mixture. Now, the composition of these substances varies over time as colostrum transitions to milk. And so in the next few slides, we'll look at how we can monitor those changes to ensure peak production of transfer factor and their impact on the immune function. Now, egg yolks makes up about a third of the weight of the egg, and it provides a very rich source of macronutrients such as fat, carbohydrates, and proteins that give sustenance to the chick embryo. It also functions as a plentiful source of vitamins and minerals. So for-life scientists can take that knowledge of these components and utilize advanced testing methods to monitor specific components that pertain to the mother's transfer of immune knowledge to her offspring. Now, the majority of these immune benefiting components are called immunoglobulins. These are kind of Y-shaped proteins used by the immune system to neutralize varying environmental health threats. One such immunoglobulin is called IgG, which makes up about 80% of the total proteins in bovine colostrum. Another is IgY, which is included in chicken egg yolks. Now, we can observe the transfer of immune knowledge from the mother to the offspring by following the IgG or IgY levels in the mother just prior to birth and then in the colostrum or in the egg yolks. So this information allows us to optimize the quality and production of transfer factors coming from the milk dairy as well as the poultry farms. Now remember, newborns only need about 75% of colostrum produced, leaving the remainder for use in for-life products. So colostrum is collected within the first 12 to 16 hours post-birth to ensure a rich, fresh source of transfer factor. So, transfer factors, I mentioned earlier, are small peptides and proteins that educate the immature immune system of the newborn to recognize, to respond to, and to remember health threats. By comparison, they are much, much smaller in size and abundance than the immunoglobulins that I just talked about, and thus they require special filtration procedures to be extracted from colostrum. So the process to obtain 4-life transfer factor involves several crucial steps: defatting colostrum, pasteurization, and concentration through these very, very fine filters that utilize processes called ultrafiltration and nanofiltration. Of course, 4-life has several patents around these filtration methods that ensure they are proprietary and exclusive to 4-life. The procedure for concentrating 4-life transfer factors from chicken egg yolks is different than from cow colostrum. In this case, these transfer factors are extracted using something we call phase separation, which essentially is just the mechanical separation of the egg yolk from the white due to differences in the thickness of the liquids contained in the egg. This allows transfer factors to be collected along with several other immune-supporting substances. Now let's switch gears and discuss how 4-life characterizes transfer factors to ensure customers get the most bioactive forms of these immune-benefiting powerhouses. 4-life transfer factor science is the exploration of the characterization and the activity of 4-life transfer factors. Transfer factors are characterized in 3 different ways to give us useful information about their composition, their size, and their identification. So first, amino acid analysis investigates the building blocks that make up transfer factors. Second, size exclusion chromatography determines the size and or molecular weight. So remember, these transfer factors are very, very small peptides and proteins, and we have to be able to distinguish them from the larger proteins called immunoglobulins. Now, third, we have an area of research called proteomics. This is the study of proteins, and this actually helps us better identify the transfer factors themselves. Now, together, this information ensures that 4-life transfer factor products are of the highest quality. Amino acid analysis determines the composition of peptide and protein samples. The first step of amino acid analysis involves breaking specific peptide and protein bonds to release these amino acids. Now, the liberated amino acids are then separated, detected, and then quantified. This analysis gives 4-life scientists insights into the composition of transfer factors. And as you can see in the graph, transfer factors are derived from cow colostrum and chicken egg yolks, and they are very, very rich in amino acids. Now, interestingly, 9 of the amino acids are the ones that the human body can't make on its own. These are called essential amino acids, and they must be acquired through our diet. Now, while amino acid is useful in determining the composition of transfer factor, it doesn't really tell us much about the molecular weight or the size of these bioactive peptides and proteins. So 4-life scientists use size exclusion chromatography, also known as SEC, now to monitor these processes. In this method, biomolecules in complex solutions are separated and then analyzed by their size or by their molecular weight. This allows 4-life to ensure that ultrafactor and nanofactor are made up of transfer factor peptides and proteins that are less than 10 kilodaltons or 5 kilodaltons. And that's just essentially a measure of their molecular weight or their molecular size. Now, why does the transfer factor size matter? Well, we know that immune-supporting peptides and proteins are within a specific molecular weight range, and so we want to be able to analyze and separate for that specific molecular weight range. Now, colostrum and egg yolks contain many proteins of varying significance, including what I mentioned earlier, the immunoglobulins. Now, these are the large molecules with molecular weights much, much greater than 20 kilodaltons. It also includes transfer factor proteins, which I mentioned. These are the smaller peptides and proteins, smaller molecules with molecular weights less than 10 kilodaltons. And with a colostrum sample in the upper graph, you can see the sharp and overlapping peaks on the left side, which would indicate major components like immunoglobulins or other large types of molecules. With the filtered colostrum spectrum on the lower graph, There are actually multiple peaks on the right side that are thought to be the transfer factors. These are transfer factors that have gone through 4Life's proprietary filtration process. And so SEC can be a very useful quality control tool to ensure the preservation of 4Life transfer factor as it goes through these special filtration processes, or we can use it to evaluate the preservation or the consistency of 4Life transfer factor in every batch. So another way to study transfer factors is through this area that we talked about called proteomics. This is an area of research that has actually exploded over the last decade with the evolution of liquid chromatography mass spectrometry instrumentation. So similar to SEC, this methodology uses liquid chromatography to separate out the many different components of highly complex samples, followed by identification by mass spectrometry. Now, this identification step is kind of like taking a biomolecular fingerprint of each peptide and each protein that is contained within the sample. That peptide fingerprint can then be entered into a large database to help identify the peptides and proteins that are coming out of this cow colostrum or this egg yolk. Now, these modern approaches allow for the investigation of peptides and proteins at a molecular level in a way that helps 4Life identify them in a highly complex sample, like, of course, bovine colostrum or chicken egg yolk. This, again, allows us to safeguard the highest quality 4Life transfer factor products. So 4Life has worked with several well-respected academic institutions in our pursuit of 4Life transfer factor science. The 4Life researchers utilize their expertise and their state-of-the-art instrumentation to separate and identify these small bioactive peptides that make up 4Life transfer factor. We have protein databases that search and help identify known colostrum proteins, such as immunoglobulins, and provide clarity into the many unknown peptides and proteins. Now, you can imagine these are highly complex samples. We're looking at lots and lots of peptides and proteins. And so we actually need artificial intelligence methods that help improve the ability to identify these unknown and known peptides and proteins. And in fact, in a lot of our studies, we have found over 35,000 different possible sequences that have been determined from peptides and proteins that are found in the ultra-filtered bovine colostrum. This is what makes up our 4Life ultra factor. So, is everybody still with me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, awesome. So now on to part 3. This is the final part of our webinar today, and this really talks about how does 4Life transfer factor work. So let's start first by learning how 4Life helps our body respond to threats. Now these were some of the first studies that were performed by 4Life. So 4Life transfer factor helps our immune system respond to threats mainly by increasing the activity of natural killer cells, or NK cells. Remember, we talked about that earlier. If we imagine that each of our cell types is a person, the natural killer cells are those that actually do the job. They destroy the health threats. So in this newer study, 4Life worked with a company called Reach Biolabs. I was actually there at their labs in Seattle last week to see some of the research that they're doing for us. Now, this is an American research company that specializes in cell biology science. This study consisted of multiple phases, and similar to previous studies that we've done, a group of healthy adults provided blood samples. The blood samples were prepared to collect the immune cells shown on this slide. These cells were incubated for 48 hours with damaging cells, with or without 4Life transfer factor. Now again, in the short amount of time and in the presence of damaging cells, natural killer cells were the main players out of this group of immune cells. And the hypothesis was that 4Life transfer factor could increase the activity of natural killer cells by improving the killing capacity of natural killer cells against these damaging or damaged cells. Now, this is a newer technique that they use called flow cytometry, and it actually measures the killing of damaging cells over time. So on this slide, you can see an example of some of the data. Each dot in this graph represents one individual cell. The red dots are the natural killer cells, the damaging cells or the threats are the green dots. And before treatment with 4-Life Transfer Factor, you can see a lot of both the red and the green. But after 48 hours of treatment, you can see that the natural killer cells are moving and spreading, while the damaging cells have almost completely disappeared. Now, this visual helps us see and show that natural killer cells are killing these damaging cells. So what does all that mean? Well, when we look at this graph, we are counting the total number of damaging cells or the health threats with TF treatment over time. So we can see that the total number of health threats decreases over time. And this is what tells us natural killer cell activity increases quite a bit over 48 hours with treatment of 4-Life Transfer Factor. Now, these results were so compelling that we actually wrote a paper about it, and we published this a couple of years ago in a scientific journal. Now, these studies were all done in cells, in human cells, but in cells. In order to look at whole person benefits, this clinical study was performed. So we took 30 young adults taking one serving of 4-Life Transfer Factor Classic. So that's 600 milligrams a day. And we did that for 15 or 30 days. And what we saw is this increased the number of cytotoxic T cells and natural killer cells with no change in T helper cells. Now, these individuals also reported feeling healthier overall. And in summary, in this study, we found that either one time daily for 15 days or 2 times daily for 30 days, 4-Life Transfer Factor Classic helped these participants maintain their overall health. In summary, we've learned that 4-Life Transfer Factor increases the activity of natural killer cells and the number of cytotoxic T cells. Now let's turn to 4-Life Transfer Factor and how it helps our immune system recognize threats. So recognition of threat comes from the T cells. And if we think of T cells being people, T cells are the type of people that are the communicators. They recognize a situation and they communicate to the environment around them. They recognize if there are problems around them that they need to fix them. They carry information about what is the threat and what is not the threat, and what needs to be destroyed and what doesn't need to be destroyed. So these cells are important in that they are transferred from the mother to the newborn via the early days of breastfeeding. Now, educated T cells from the mother is transferred to the newborn, of course, through colostrum. This study proves that colostrum contains important molecules that can transfer educated T cells to help the immune system recognize specific threats. And since 4-Life Transfer Factor is from colostrum, 4-Life would expect to see similar effects of T cells or on T cells in these studies. So to study T cells, 4-Life scientists used an assay called immunoKnow. In this study, blood samples were collected from healthy individuals who were accustomed to consuming 4-Life Transfer Factor products in comparison to individuals that have never taken 4-Life Transfer Factor, and then measure the activity of helper T cells. In this assay, measures the ability of T helper cells to respond to non-specific stimulants, in this case called PHA. Now, PHA is a foreign molecule, but it's not a threat to our body. So here are the study results. 4-Life scientists found that the activity of helper T cells was overactive in people who had never taken 4-Life Transfer Factor. And then slightly lower activity of these T cells was found in people who consumed cow colostrum. And interestingly, in people who were taking 4-Life Transfer Factor trifactor formula and 4-Life Transfer Factor plus, the activity of these T cells were similar to T cells at rest. These results suggest that 4-Life Transfer Factor reduces helper T cells activity when a foreign but not harmful molecule is present. And 4-Life Transfer Factor educates these helper T cells to not react to the harmful stimulants. It's important to note that this effect was specific to these helper T cells. So what does all this mean? Well, what we've learned so far is that 4-Life Transfer Factor balances immune response by being an activator of the natural killer cells and the cytotoxic T cells. Now, these again are immune cells that destroy health threats. But in contrast, reducing helper T cell activity when there is no threat present. And again, T cells are the cells that recognize threats. Thus, 4-Life Transfer Factor helps our immune system recognize threats by affecting T cells. Now, a temporary decrease of the immune system function is also beneficial. However, overactive immune system is not beneficial to the body. Now, many immune products in the marketplace are simply stimulators of the immune response. Now, the ideal product will actually balance the immune system functions to activate it when it's needed and suppress it when it's needed, right? So remember, underperforming the immune system, we need to boost our immune system or activate our natural killer cells. And then when our immune system is overactive, we need to reduce it. So we really need balance. And that's really what differentiates 4-Life from a lot of products out there that are immune products. Now, to understand that 4-Life Transfer Factor helps the immune system remember threats, studies were performed to look at the effects of 4-Life Transfer Factor on immunoglobulins, or another term for antibodies. These are the immune memory markers, and so if 4-Life helps these immunoglobulins, they help with immune memory. So as we learned earlier, B cells are the cells that make these immunoglobulins, and just to understand the importance, similar to T cells, these immunoglobulins are transferred to newborns during the early days of breastfeeding and thus present in colostrum. These, of course, are too large to be 4-Life Transfer Factor molecules, but 4-Life Transfer Factor can affect them to help them remember threats. There are 5 types of immunoglobulins: IgG, IgA, IgM, IgD, and IgE. So we studied 4-Life Transfer Factors on the IgA type. So IgA is the main type present in saliva. Saliva samples are easier to collect from people than blood, and thus a more practical way to study them. Also, IgA is the primary class of immunoglobulins in human colostrum and in breast milk. So we have performed 2 studies. In 2007, 21 healthy adults received 4-Life Transfer Factor trifactor formula for 2 weeks, and then 4-Life Transfer Factor Rio Vita for 2 weeks. In the 2017 study, we had 13 participants that were given Right Start men or Right Start women for 3 months. Now, IgA was measured in saliva of the participants every month, and the measurement of IgA in the saliva was done before treatment and every month thereafter. Now, let's put all together in the study that was done in 2019. It was performed by an independent group of researchers in Taiwan. The researchers studied 4-Life Transfer Factor plus trifactor formula. They replicated the findings of increased natural killer cell activity with flow cytometry technology. And for the first time, we studied another type of immune cells called the macrophages. This study showed an increase in the activity of macrophages. Now remember, the macrophages are immune cells that destroy threats. We also learned about cytokines. These are the molecules that some immune cells use to kill health threats. Now, in this study, the researchers noted an increase in the cytokines IL-2 and interferon gamma. They also noticed an increase in the level of immunoglobulin IgG that was specific to the health threat. This is another piece of data that demonstrates that 4-Life Transfer Factor helps the immune system respond to and remember potential health threats. So, in this part 3, we learned that 4-Life Transfer Factor helps our immune system respond to threats by stimulating natural killer cells and others, including macrophages and cytokines. We also learned that 4-Life Transfer Factor helps the immune system recognize threats by affecting T cells, increasing cytotoxic T cells, and teaching helper T cells to calm down when there's no health threat present. We also learned that 4-Life Transfer Factor helps our immune system remember threats by stimulating the production of the immune memory markers called the immunoglobulins. And these immune benefits of 4-Life Transfer Factor start in our gastrointestinal tract. Now, before we conclude, let us imagine that 4-Life Transfer Factor is like our mentors or our teachers in life. Have you had teachers or mentors in your life? Those individuals that have helped you face challenges and provided you with guidance to succeed. I can think of a few individuals that have provided important education and knowledge that helped me succeed. And now let's imagine that 4-Life Transfer Factor is the mentor or the teacher that provides education and guidance to the immune cells on how to better recognize, respond to, and remember threats, and thus become a more successful immune system. So let's summarize all that we've learned today. I know it's been quite a lot, and so perhaps we can focus just on a few key points from each of the three parts. So, part one, we learned that the immune system is everywhere in our body, and it's there to protect us from potential health threats. Part two, we learned that 4Life has proprietary methods to extract transfer factor from cow colostrum and from chicken egg yolk, and that it's comprised of small peptides and proteins. And in part three, we learned that 4Life transfer factor educates the immune system to recognize, respond to, and remember potential health threats. So congratulations for completing this webinar with me today. I hope that you learned something important, not only for you to raise your immune IQ, but also to share the knowledge of the immune system and the knowledge of transfer factor with other people. Now, I understand we have a Q&A session, I think, right after this, so I'm happy and look forward to exchanging ideas with all of you. Thank you so much.